Hurricane Irma's outer winds lash Florida, knocking out power to 25 km. As Florida braced for the full force of Hurricane Irma, early gale-force winds lashed southern portions of the state Saturday, knocking out power to tens of thousands of people. The storm, downgraded to a Category 3 as it rolled past Cuba, was positioned to roar up the west coast of the Sunshine State early Sunday, bringing high winds and life-threatening storm surge to both coasts. The storm's track has shifted toward the state's west coast, sparring Miami a direct blow but setting up cities such as Key West, Naples, Fort Myers, Sarasota and the Tampa-St area for a battering. The storm is here, Governor Rick Scott said Saturday morning, noting 25,000 people were already without power. Florida Power and Light, which serves nearly 10 million people in southern Florida, reported power knocked out for residents of Broward and Miami-Dade counties. The company expects 9 million people will be affected by the storm. Officials warned more than 6 million people in Florida and Georgia to leave their homes in the remaining hours before the first major effects of the storm hit late in the day. The storm has killed at least 20 people since roaring out of the open Atlantic and chewing through a string of Caribbean islands. The National Hurricane Center issued a hurricane warning for both coasts of the peninsula up through central parts of the state. Scott said 50,000 people had already taken refuge in the more than 260 shelters located in every county outside the highly vulnerable Keys. He said 70 more shelters were set to open. "This is a deadly storm, and our state has never seen anything like it," Scott said from the Emergency Operations Center. Millions of Floridians will see major hurricane impact with deadly storm surge and life-threatening winds. Scott pleaded with people in evacuation zones to leave immediately. He added everyone in the state should stock at least 3 days of food and water because emergency response teams would be overwhelmed once the storm passed. "We'll get to you as quickly as we can, but you have to be part of this," he said. "You have to save your life." Scott also appealed for 1,000 volunteer nurses to help at special needs shelters. The National Hurricane Center, which downgraded Irma to a Category 4 early Saturday, said Cuba's terrain sapped some of the storm's strength, but that it still packed maximum sustained winds of 130 miles per hour. The center said the storm is expected to re-strengthen as it moves back over open waters. As of 11 a.m. ET, Irma was a Category 3 storm, with maximum sustained winds of 125 miles per hour, but the Hurricane Center said it was expected to re-strengthen once it moved away from Cuba. The center of the storm was located about 175 miles southeast of Key West, Florida, moving west at 9 miles per hour. When the 300-mile-wide storm roars ashore, it will act like a giant buzzsaw as it plows up the state's west coast late Saturday and into Monday, battering cities such as Key West, Naples, Fort Myers, Sarasota, and the Tampa-St area with hurricane-force winds, torrential rain, and devastating storm surge inundation. This will be the worst single hurricane to hit Florida since Hurricane Andrew in 1992, said meteorologist Joel Myers, head of AccuWeather. Storm surge, the wall of seawater that roars ashore as a hurricane makes landfall, inundating coastal areas, will be dangerous and life-threatening for people who didn't evacuate. Some areas could see up to 15 feet of seawater pushed ashore from Irma, the Hurricane Center said. Storm surge warnings have been hoisted all the way from the Keys to north of Tampa. If the storm hits at Category 4 strength, as predicted, the ferocious 130 miles per hour winds in Irma's eye wall will produce catastrophic damage. Locations where a Category 4 eye wall hits will see power outages that will last weeks to possibly months. Most of the area will be uninhabitable for weeks or months, the Hurricane Center said. Few people alive have experienced a storm like this, Weather Channel meteorologist Brian Norcross said. It is reminiscent of the great hurricanes that unleashed their fury on Florida in the first 7 decades of the 20th century, and then for the most part disappeared. Eric Blake, A meteorologist at the Hurricane Center said this hurricane is as serious as any I have seen. Meanwhile, after making landfall as a hurricane on the east coast of Mexico late Friday, Katia quickly weakened to a tropical depression over a mountainous region of the nation Saturday. Heavy rain from the storm, potentially as much as 25 inches, will likely cause life-threatening flash floods and mudslides, especially in areas of mountainous terrain, the Hurricane Center said. Hurricane Jose maintained its Category 4 status over the Atlantic and was positioned about 120 miles east of the northern Leeward Islands, moving to the northwest at 13 miles per hour with maximum sustained winds of 145 miles per hour. Forecasters are also watching a new tropical disturbance that just formed off the coast of West Africa. That system has a 30% chance of developing into a tropical storm within the next 5 days, the Hurricane Center said. If it gets a name, it would be Tropical Storm Lee. Please subscribe my channel. Thank you.